Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the state of Indiana, or greetings from the state of Indiana. We arrived safely, as obvious, but we flew through Canada, stayed overnight in Toronto, inside the airport, just sitting in the airport seats there, and we're not allowed to leave the secured area. And then the next morning, we flew on to Chicago and finally came down to Indiana just a few hours after that. And Mrs. Smith got special treatment by security. That means she got extra inspections by security, and not exactly sure why that is. Maybe she looks like a terrorist, not sure, but other people were very kind. They just did what they were supposed to do and what they had to do. And they were very kind to us. And anyway, so last Friday we registered the children for school, Buddy and Becca for college there at Hyles-Anderson. And then Monday we checked them into the dormitories with all of their luggage and things like that. And they began their classes. So we get to see them at this point in time in the afternoons. The girls who are dormitory students at the college, they must get permission to leave campus because the school takes special note and care for them. And the men, they have permission to go off campus for work or whatnot without getting special permission, so long as they're back on time. And of course, that they don't break the rules while they're out. But the kids are getting used to classes and things and enjoying that. And we're enjoying watching them, I guess you might say, grow up. And what a blessing it has been. And of course, checking them into the dorms and them sleeping there and whatnot. It's the first time in, my word, almost 17 years that they have been separated from both of us on any given night in almost their entire lifetime. And so it's an adjustment for sure, but at least it gets to be a bit of a slow one because we do have a few more weeks here before we come home. And so thanking the Lord for that. And I hope you're doing well, and hope your families are well, and hope you're being faithful in church. You're here tonight, and so I'm grateful for that. Keep on being faithful. There's nothing in life greater than the characteristic of faithfulness. You can build your family on that. We build our Christian life on the fact that God is faithful to us. And thank the Lord that He is, and we should be like that for each other and for our church. That means every time the doors are open, be in your place. Don't make excuses. Don't find reasons not to be there. Don't backslide. Be in your place. Be in your place. We want other things to be faithful like that for us. We want the buses to run faithfully. We want our car to start faithfully. We want the legs on our chair to work faithfully, and our appliances to work faithfully, and we want electricity faithfully. Now be a faithful Christian yourself. Amen. And encourage each other. And of course, that's why you're there tonight, because you're being a faithful Christian. And I'm grateful for that. And the church is grateful. The Lord will bless you for it. And praise the Lord. Well, tonight we're going to get into 1 Kings. And before we do, I want to kind of review a bit as we look at the development of the nation of Israel in our review, as we have covered these things already. Before the Exodus, before the children of Israel came out of Egypt, they were pretty much just an ethnic group, a group of people with some shared characteristics, some shared traditions. But they were still just an ethnic group living in a foreign land. They shared the same physical heritage. Abraham was their forefather. They shared some cultural heritage, such as circumcision and things like that. They had some of the same religious beliefs, a religious heritage there, and that's the worship of Jehovah. But idolatry was also a part of some of their lives, as we learn later. But from the point of Exodus, in Exodus, God separates them from the people of Egypt and brings them out as a separate individual entity, as a group of people on their own. And from the point of Exodus, they become a nation. The children of Israel becomes the nation of Israel. God separates them from Egypt. He establishes a national leader who is Moses. He gives them national laws, the Ten Commandments, and of course many others to go along with that. He gives them a national culture, the sacrifices in the book of Leviticus, and this is how we do things, and so forth and so on. All of that becomes part of their culture. The feast days, they had 4 major feasts throughout the course of the year. And they were to wear different things on their clothing to remind them of the laws of the Lord and things like that, and so on. All these were they became part of their national culture. They had a national worship of Jehovah and Jehovah alone. And all of this takes place in the book of Exodus as they leave the land of Egypt. And then, of course, you've got Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy as Moses reinforces in their minds the teaching of the laws, and then teach these to your young people and so on, and pass these things down. And we learned that teaching was a very important part to them, and it should be to us. And then during their wilderness travels, God is preparing them to have their own land, which would be, of course, the land of Canaan. And when they got there in the book of Numbers, they rejected it because they didn't trust the Lord. They had 2 years to learn to trust God, 2 years to see what he could do for them. And he performed, incredibly. They faced every type of hardship, and he provided at every step of the way. They still didn't trust him. I mean, the worst thing you can do to God is not believe him. And people who die and go to hell will not go to hell because God cast them in because he's an angry God. They'll go to hell because they didn't believe him. That's important. God has never told a lie, and he has given us his truth. And so it's important that we believe him. And as a Christian, you should make it a point, I believe God. Not just believe in God. I believe what God says about everything in life. So they become a nation as God takes them out of Egypt and into the wilderness, and they begin to share those national cultural things of a national leader, national laws, national culture, and the national worship of Jehovah, and they're prepared for the Canaan land. And then in the books of Joshua and Judges, we see the rise of the nation of Israel, and then we see the fall of the nation of Israel. The rise in the book of Joshua as they enter Canaan, and they told Joshua, the leaders did, whatever you say, what God tells you, we'll do. And you just keep the presence of God upon you, and we will follow you and do what you tell us to do. And they did that. And so they had a meteoric rise, just straight up like that. And they could not be conquered by anybody, and they were conquering everybody. And then in Judges, we find their fall. Wow, it went as fast as it came. Was it just because, time ran out for them? No, it was choices that they made. They made choices I'll do my own thing. I'm going to be my own person. I don't need these laws and things. I mean, I know how I got here and I can keep this together. And what a terrible mistake to choose disobedience, to choose to be stubbornly addicted to their own way. And boy, we as Christians are like that today. We'll obey God here, but not here. We'll, yes, God commands me to go soul winning. I'm not going. Yes, God commands me to dress as a godly lady. I'll do that sometimes. But I've got my other stuff there. Those things in your closet that God doesn't approve of are idols. And just like the people in Judges found their own idols, we have our own idols. Those determinations of, oh yeah, I'll be at church when it's convenient for me, and when it's not, I'll be at home. I can worship online. It's an idol. Don't forsake the assembling of yourselves together. It doesn't say don't forsake the watching videos. Don't forsake the assembling of yourself together. Have dinner together at different places. One's at the table, one's at the neighbor's, one's down the street. Try having dinner together like that. It's not dinner together. They're finding great difficulty having school together with everybody separated. It doesn't work the same. Don't forsake the assembling of yourselves together. Some Christians reject the concept of marriage. It has the idea of not being married, living together, and that this is good and okay and acceptable is an idol. It's their idol. They don't want to give it up. They don't want to burn it. They don't want to get rid of it. And they've got every excuse in the world for it. It's just an excuse to disobey. You don't want to be like that. You want your heart to say, Lord, I will obey, because that is where success is. In total obedience as we learn what God teaches us to do in different areas of life. But we see in Joshua and Judges the rise of the children of Israel, the nation of Israel, and their fall. And we see why. In Joshua, they were obedient. In Judges, they were not. In Joshua, they rose. In Judges, they fell. Then from 1 Samuel to the end of 2 Chronicles, we see the end of the judges, the establishment of the kings, and the various peaks and valleys of Israelite nationhood. And then its final crumbling, defeat, and permanent captivity until the year 1948. We see that at the end of 2 Chronicles. Wow. And we see their nationhood go up and down and up and down, and then finally taken into captivity. And they later, 70 years later, are released from captivity, but they will never have their own national sovereignty as a nation again until 1948. You can only play with God for so long, and he will deal with it. Don't play with him at all. It's not worth it. He's your Father. He's also God. He's the King. And to him, righteousness is everything. It's very, very important to him. Better to obey than to do your own thing. I'd rather have a close relationship with God through obedience than be deceived in my mind that I am close to him because, I got this blessing, I got that blessing, I got this answer to prayer, I got that answer to prayer, God does whatever I want, when my life is not in alignment with the Word of God, and I know it. Wow, don't do that. First and Second Kings, First and Second Chronicles record the reign of the kings in Israel. The division between Israel and Judah, when Israel becomes the northern kingdom, and it's called Israel, and Judah becomes a southern kingdom, and it's called Judah. Judah is also a tribe, but those two names, once the kingdom is divided into two, and it's not an equal two either. 10 tribes basically go with Israel, the northern kingdom, and 2 tribes, Judah and Benjamin, I think, go with the southern kingdom. But anyway, and so the book of the Kings, First and Second Kings, and the book of Chronicles, First and Second Chronicles, record these things, and they oftentimes overlap as they record the same kings and so on and so forth. But not only do they have some similar information, they also have unique ways at looking at some of the same kings. You'll read Chronicles and you'll get information oftentimes about a king and his reign that you won't get in the book of Kings. And the same thing for the book of Kings about Chronicles. They open up different additional information about one king's reign or another. And then when you put them together, you understand, wow, so that's why that happened. So that's what God meant about that. And so you want to read them almost together because it's very, very interesting. And those 4 books, First and Second Kings, First and Second Chronicles, are lessons on leadership. Lessons on leadership. If you want to know what works and why, then you read First and Second Kings and First and Second Chronicles, talking about leadership. You see, everybody's a leader in some fashion. It may be in your home. It may be at the job. It may be in politics. But everybody is a leader. And everybody should be a leader of their own heart. You don't let your heart do what it wants to do. The heart is deceitful above all things and desperately wicked. You don't follow your heart. Heavens. I mean, that's a big theme in Walt Disney movies and U.S. movies and all that. Just follow your heart, and you'll accomplish so much, and you'll be fulfilled and whatnot. They're lying to you. Don't follow your heart. Train your heart to follow God. Follow God, and you'll find fulfillment. Follow God, and you'll find victory in the things of God and in life. Don't follow your heart. That's the worst advice anybody's ever been given. We have a whole nation of people who follow their heart. We have a government inundated with people on welfare. It comes from following your heart. Let's see, there's some other things here. In the books of First and Second Kings, First and Second Chronicles, you have little short examples. I say little, I'm talking about just short in time there, of examples of kings who made correct decisions and they saw great results. Other kings who made poor decisions, they embraced idolatry. They made bad decisions as a leader. They made decisions in pride, all sorts of different things. And you watch them crumble because of that. So we get the idea that when we're successful, whether it be in business or in life, in home, at church, or whatever, maybe with money, or in politics, we get the idea that now that I've arrived, I'm good and I know what I'm doing and whatnot, and we don't think we can crumble. Oh, the God who set you up is the God who can take you down. You may have gotten there by hard work, and that's good. Wise decisions, and that's good. But you change those things, and you'll find you'll crumble as fast as you climbed. And so the book of First and Second Kings and First and Second Chronicles shows you how to succeed as a leader in so many different areas and what you need to do. You could add in there First and Second Samuel as well, because you've got the reign of Saul and the reign of David and so on. Here in First Kings, let me turn my notes over here. And so let me make this statement here before I go on. But as you see these short vignettes, these short stories about these kings. Some are just a chapter, some are several chapters. And you see what makes them tick, what makes them successful, what causes their failures. Some ruled for a long time, but they were failures. Some were given some blessings from God because he had pity upon his people. It wasn't because of their lifestyle or their choices. It's because God wanted to have mercy on his people. And then you see others who diligently sought the Lord, and God helped them and protected them through tremendous difficulties in life. You will always have difficulties in life. You'll always have challenges. You'll always have problems. That's not a sign that things are going badly. It's a sign that you're living life. I mean, what is it we say in Barbados? As long as you're living, there'll be problems. As long as you're living, you're going to have aches and pains. We don't say that we have these things because we didn't do something right. It's just part of life. But when I walk with God and you walk with God and we search his word and we get it out and we study it to see what we are supposed to do in these areas, instead of making up our own minds and our own decisions, we can walk safely through life and these things. The Bible is first and foremost a practical book, a practical book. And it is there to teach you how to walk through life. And so it's not just a spiritual, it just makes you feel good bug. And that's what the heathen think of it. Well, give the people their Bible, give the people their church, because those poor, weak, emotional people, they just need that book. Whatever it does for them, if it helps them, hey, give it to them. That's kind of what we saw, how the church was treated during the lockdown. It's not essential. It's not important. But, many people, especially the old people, they grew up in church, so it's an emotional crutch for them. So we'll give it to them. They have no concept. Our leaders have no concept of what the Bible really is. Even mostly those that call themselves Christian. Because this book is not a light to them, nor a lamp to them. They're walking in darkness and they're blinded. Well, that's what it is. So the Bible is first and foremost a practical book. One other thought I want to give you at this moment, before we get into a little bit of First Kings, is that it's a political thought. I want you to think about this for a moment. When did the Israelites have the most freedom in their history in the land of Canaan? And talking about personal freedom here. Was it when they came into Canaan and with Joshua, they destroyed the Canaanite nations who were so wicked in their immorality, their violence, and their idolatry? Did they have the most personal freedom during the book of Judges, when they could, they were worshiping their idols, and then they were in captivity for so many years, and then a judge would come and God would raise them up and get them out of captivity, and then they would worship God for a while, and then back to the idolatry, and then back to captivity? Did they have a lot of personal freedom then? Did they have a lot of personal freedom under the kings? As King Saul was chosen king. We want a king. We want to be like all the other nations. And they entered into this time of the kings. From Saul to David to Solomon to Rehoboam, and then the many other kings who were to fall. When did they have the most personal freedom on the individual level to make your own choices in life, to work hard and succeed or fail, and to reap those those fruits, those fruits of hard labor. And they can make their own choices and all of that. When did they have the most freedom? I propose to you that during the time of Joshua, when he was elderly, they have conquered the land of Canaan. Each tribe now has its own area to finish pushing out the Canaanites. They had no king. They had no overreigning monarchy or national government. Each tribe and each individual family was expected to follow the Lord. I mean, the tabernacle was in Shiloh. You could go to the tabernacle and worship as you saw fit. The priests were there to do that. But each family was required, they had several things. They had self-responsibility to, you need to finish pushing out the people of Canaan for yourself. Caleb did. He went on top of a mountain and faced the giants and pushed them out and established that as his family land. Each tribe was responsible for that. But there was no monarchy, no overruling national reign. So there was no taxation except the tithe. They brought the tithe basically once a year or sometimes once every 3 years, depending on how the crops and different things went. But there was no king to say, I want your son. I need that land. I need your fruits and your crops. I need your money. We've got to build an army over here, and I want to build my house over there, and I want to make this really pretty, and so I want this from you, you, and you, and you. They had great freedom near the end of Joshua's life and the elders that overlived Joshua. Great personal responsibility, too, because you had to go and push out the Canaanites for yourself. But it could be done. Caleb did it. And you could serve God as earnestly as you wanted. Great personal freedom, tremendous personal responsibility, a lot of hard work involved. But you got to reap all the benefits too. All the crops were yours. When the kings came along, that's what Saul did. He started what I described a moment ago. I need your sons for my army. I need your daughters for my bakers and confectionaries. She's going to work in my palace. He's going to do this. And I need that land too. And I need those crops as well. And all the kings taxed them heavily. Solomon especially. They gave up personal freedom because they didn't want the responsibility. I'm talking about the people. They gave up personal freedom because they wanted security from a human leader who could not really give them much more security than what they already had, because their security came from God. That's where we are today. That's what socialism is. I'll give to the government my money and my freedom if you'll give me security. I want health care. I want education. I want pension. And so we tell the government, give me those things and you can have my money. And so we are heavily taxed. Every nation on earth is like this, practically speaking. And they give us a semblance of security from a human who cannot do anything more for me than what I can do for myself if I have God. And so that's kind of interesting. Capitalism is scriptural. Socialism is not. I'm not supposed to trust in princes. I'm supposed to trust in God. We come this evening, to 1 Kings. 1 Kings starts with the end of the reign of David. He's an old man and weak and in bed, and he will soon die. And he establishes Solomon to be his heir to the throne. Solomon takes over, and Solomon, in the beginning, wanted the wisdom of God to be able to judge God's people. And I say judge, that means to hear their complaints and issues one with the other, to see what is the truth between it, and then to judge righteously so that those who are innocent are protected, those who are guilty are charged and punished. He wanted wisdom for that, and God gave it to him. And because he wanted wisdom for that, God also gave him long life. God gave him riches and things and fame. And the beginning of his reign, he did well. He did very well. And then, as you are doing well, you decide you don't need the God that brought you there. And anyway, and so you see all the way through the book of 1 Kings, a king who will follow the Lord and be blessed, a king who will not follow the Lord and have trouble, and so on. And so this evening, you have from 1 Kings, you have from the end of David's reign to Solomon, to Rehoboam, his son, to the division of the kingdom between Judah, the southern kingdom, Israel, the northern kingdom, and then you have two lines of kings going all the way through the end of 2 Kings. And eventually the northern kingdom is destroyed and taken into captivity early, and the southern kingdom is destroyed later by Nebuchadnezzar and taken into captivity. And finally destroyed as a kingdom, as a nation at all. There's nothing left. But I want to talk to you about a specific lesson. Let me give you some important events and some important people very quickly that you may know or not realize are in 1 Kings itself. Some of the famous people in 1 Kings, besides the different kings, are the Queen of Sheba. You've heard the story of Queen of Sheba. She comes to Solomon in his heyday, and she sees that, and she sees his apparel and the apparel of his servants and how he's building things and the gold and the silver that's everywhere. And the wisdom of Solomon, and she is so very, very impressed. We have some and she goes back home with a variety of things that Solomon gives her for that. And today we have many people who have taken fables and said that, Queen of Sheba had an affair with King Solomon, and so there was a son by Solomon through the Queen of Sheba, and so this is the, we're part of the, we're the true Hebrew line, and so on and so forth. There's no evidence for that, not in the Scripture, none. And unfortunately, there's many people who believe that. But the only place you're going to find that is outside the Bible. It's made up fables. There's no evidence of that. But the Queen of Sheba was a real woman, a real queen. We have the widow of Zarephath. We have Elijah. And then Elisha is introduced to us later in the book of 1 Kings. And of course, his ministry comes in the book of 2 Kings. But Elijah, and wow, what a fantastic ministry that Elijah had. We have Ahab and Jezebel, two of the most wicked people. Wow. And of course, there's a man named Naboth. And I'd love to get into that, but we won't have time tonight. But Ahab coveted Naboth's vineyard, and then he took it and killed Naboth through deceit and subtlety and so forth. And that made God very, very angry. The commandment, thou shalt not covet, is just as real as thou shalt not kill. And coveting is so easy. To want what somebody else has, and then to use power, oppression, subtlety, or whatnot to gain it. If you see something that somebody else has, and you'd like to have something like that, then work hard and get it. There's nothing wrong with that. Do not want what they have. Do not want their family. Do not want their spouse. Do not want their money. Do not want their position. Do not want their clothes. Do not want anything that they have. If you want something like it, work hard to obtain it through honest means. Never, never hunger or desire for something that belongs to somebody else. It's wrong. It's sin. That's exactly what the folks over in Rock Hall have done when they took land that wasn't theirs. They saw it, they coveted it, and they took it. They will be judged for that. They will be judged for that. Our government does not see it as wrong.